Hello, welcome, Florian Waitl. How are you?
Good. How are you, Justin?
Great. Thank you for joining us. My name is Justin from Pacific Rex. We're going to be talking about your new documentary, the 32nd Infantry Division's Nightmare Battle of Buna. So glad to have you online, virtually. We've got the documentary playing between us. Congratulations. I guess the first question, Florian, is tell a little bit about yourself and your background, and you know what your position is as an Army historian.
Okay, yeah. So first, I got to start off with my little disclaimer, of course. And I need to let you know that all the views and opinions that I might express here during this program do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the Wisconsin National Guard, the Department of the Army, DoD, or the U.S. government. And I'll be probably talking about some references or commercial products as well and services that do not imply any or constitute the Wisconsin National Guard, U.S. Army, or DoD endorsement for those products. So with that out of the way, yes, so I'm Captain Florian Waitl. I'm the command historian of the Wisconsin Army National Guard. I've been the command historian now for almost 2 years on the M-Day side, which means 1 week in a month usually, and then 2 weeks during the summer, just like a traditional guardsman. Before that, I was the command historian out of Santa Fe for the New Mexico National Guard. And then on my full time position that I had previously, I was also command historian at the U.S. Army Engineer School in Fort Leonard Wood. And then I also worked for several years as a historian, part of a staff write team at Army University Press. And that is obviously the government entity or army entity that we work together, the Wisconsin National Guard with Army University Press, to work on that documentary that we'll be talking about. So,
Excellent. Well, thank you for your service, and for all the historians out there. I guess there's a place for you in the Army and the National Guard as well, right? And
there is just see a recruiter.
incredible. And you have also been deployed overseas yourself. You tell a little bit about that.
Yeah, so going really back, just about my background. Obviously, you hear some, slight accent there. I originally from Germany, came over here to the United States when I was 16 as an exchange student. Decided to stay. I have enlisted time in the Nevada Army National Guard back in the day. I was a cavalry scout. Then I went in the Air Guard as a cop, and then I actually got direct commission in Navy Reserve as an intel officer. I did deploy twice as an Army civilian, part of a human terrain team, both times to Afghanistan, to Regional Command North. So I worked a lot with the Germans and the Belgians and Croatians and everybody else that was up there. So really interesting. And actually, some of those kind of things from my background, I of course bring also into the documentary, which we're gonna, I think, discuss here just a little bit when we talk about the human terrain of who are the people that actually live over there. So.
Absolutely. Well, with your service in Afghanistan, a number of other veterans have told me that Papua New Guinea and Afghanistan are very similar countries. And in fact, one said the only difference is the color. New Guinea is green, Afghanistan is sand and red. And I'm curious if you agree with that sentiment. There's a lot of similarities in terms of human terrain and difficult environment, and the importance of the people, the local population.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That's what I always tell people. So, for a project like this, I mean, especially in the military, you do a lot of planning to get everything done. Well, guess what? Once you go over there, that is when it's like, man, we didn't think about this, or this is not working out that easily. Same with Afghanistan, right? When you went on missions and things like that, and the people really, a tribal society. So many different peoples from different tribes with different languages. Everybody's working on their own little kind of like fiefdom of what they're trying to accomplish. And then, of course, we come in as the outsiders trying to make sense of everything. So, yes, very similar. Everything, every time there's something else, something new, and that is always, I think, a great challenge. That is really challenge and opportunity at the same time. So,
Absolutely. Well, to jump right into it, your documentary is about a specific Army National Guard unit, the 32nd Infantry Division of World War II, the Red Arrow Division. Can you, very briefly for those that aren't familiar, kind of paint a picture of that division's history, their background, and how they came to be the U.S.'s first division to serve overseas from the Army.
We still had the 32nd. It's of course during World War One. That is when the division started. There's actually another great documentary from one of my predecessors out there, Dawn of the Red Arrow, that talks about the 32nd Infantry Division when they're going over to France and do all their fighting. This is where actually they developed their patch, the Red Arrow that pierces the line of the Germans. And of course, if you look at the unit history and lineage, it really goes back, to the Civil War and at Gettysburg, for example. If you look at the Wisconsin units, a very, very great history of the way they did the fighting and the Black Hats and stuff like that. Well, and it's not just Wisconsin; it's also Milwaukee. We gotta make sure we give them some credit too there, right? But yeah, when I came to Wisconsin, not very specialized or too much of an interest, quite frankly, in the Pacific War. It was always for me European when we talk about World War II. So I want to throw that out too. And then 32nd, okay, well, the 32nd is still around. It is now an infantry brigade combat team. So obviously much smaller, but it has the same patch still. And that is one of the things you see throughout Wisconsin and Michigan. I mean, we have a highway named after them. There are so many towns that have the red arrow in different kind of monuments for them, things like that. So that is something that is really still part of the Wisconsin society here. Most people probably don't know about the Battle of Buna, what the soldiers went through, but it is still that is part of really society up here in the Midwest. So.
Excellent. And in your career, have you had the opportunity to meet any World War II veterans from the division in your work or personal capacity?
Unfortunately, not. And the reason is because I was just introduced too late for that. I mean, it's been now not even 2 years when I started really looking at the 32nd, right? But that is the reason why it was great. The people that I got in contact with as soon as I came over here. One of them being, for example, James Campbell, that wrote the Ghost Mountain Boys. A great book about specifically 126th when they go over the Kappa Kappa Trail. He has many interviews that he conducted. His book came out back in 2007, and he of course has I really think hundreds of interviews from some of those veterans that were part of the 32nd. And then, of course, the Wisconsin Veterans Museum, which we utilized quite a bit, and some other museums, and of course, historical societies. And I started traveling around Wisconsin quite a bit when I was put on orders for this project specifically. And that was one of the idea to actually inform Wisconsinites of the history of the 32nd. And no matter what historic society you go to, there's always something of the 32nd. And many times they do have some kind of interviews. Either they have them written, or they might have some old VHS tape.
Absolutely. Looks like you're.
Some of the things we out. Oh yeah, it just broke up.
Yep. No, go ahead. You were saying the veteran societies have resources and so forth.
Yes, so there's still so much information out there, which was part of the reason why we did this documentary, by utilizing all of or many of those kind of interviews, those oral interviews that we're able to find at the different organizations, which is really different than some of the other products from Army University Press. So that was the idea of, let's take those interviews, really utilize them to let this veterans talk their own story for the most part, and then of course get our other points across as well that we usually do it with Army University Press films.
Excellent. Yes, the documentary, which I encourage everybody to watch, is really rich because has those interviews you talked about, VHS tapes, some audio-only recordings, and some primary documents that you've used to bring the eyewitnesses, the veterans themselves, into the story. So that was a real highlight for me. And moving on, the Battle of Buna. Many people may have heard the name Buna but don't know much about it. Of course, for context, it was in the eastern half of New Guinea on the north coast in present-day Papua New Guinea. The Battle of Buna was fought between the U.S. Army, 32nd Infantry Division, as well as the Australian Army against an entrenched Japanese that were defending coastal strongholds, 3 locations, Buna, Gona, Sen, and Anda. Can you speak just sort of generally and broadly about the Buna battle? What makes it so special, so important? Why is it relevant today? Please tell us a bit about it.
How much time do we have? Because, so let me backtrack just a little bit. So, as an army historian, we don't do history for history's sake. There has to be really some outcome to it, and that is really to improve the warfighter, right? The soldiers that might be going to war nowadays must gain something from that history. It's not a lineage and honors and things like that. It is truly making the warfighter better. So that was the reason why Army University Press or Army University Films out of Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, works on some of those documentaries. So what they do is they tell the story from the battle that they have in the different documentaries. They have actually footage from that time period. They also have some virtual terrain to really show the audience of how the terrain looked like back then. They put all of those things together, and then they also add modern doctrine. Modern doctrine being how do we fight, how we're supposed to fight. So that is really, the, the big thing that we want to get out of those movies to improve the warfighter. Well, there hasn't been done a movie besides regarding the Philippines from Army University Films, besides this one now talking about jungle warfare. And I think that is part of the reason why we are right now that successful too, of having as that many clicks. We have, I think, 125,000 views right now in 13 days, which is great. And I hope it really goes out to the right people. So with the current geopolitics that is going on right now in the Indo-PACOM area, how do you prepare for a fight like this? So we look at some of those lessons, and we always love talking about lessons learned, but when is a lesson actually learned? Well, when there's changed behavior. And unfortunately, many times we as human beings, don't change our behavior. So coming in with a pretty much clean slate, looking at that Battle of Buna, looking at of what's going on nowadays with some of the challenges that our soldiers, our military would face in that kind of theater, we started looking at okay, where can we see some parallels? And there are so many parallels. In the documentary, you will see just the austere environment, which of course is still nowadays. When we went to Buna, we flew from Port Moresby over the Owen Stanley Mountains. We landed at Truro Airport. Then we had somebody pick us up to drive us out to Buna. Buna, small village. There's no no stores besides maybe a couple of people selling some things on the side of the road, which is very normal, of course, for Papua New Guinea. We didn't have no cell reception for our phones. We had to get water out of the well. There were no cars over there. Besides, 4 or 5 days later, he came and picked us up again. There was no air conditioner. There's no hotel. It goes on and on and on. So this is an austere environment. Again, going back to some of the things I experienced, I also worked for Center for Army Lessons Learned previously. And I remember in 2016 when we did the biggest exercise at that point in Poland, I was told by some of the logisticians over there that this is really an austere environment coming from our counterinsurgency in Afghanistan, Iraq, where we also had McDonald's and Burger King at some of those bases, and Wi-Fi worked and everything else, to now going to Eastern Europe. They talked about austere environment, and now we're talking about, okay, have you been in Papua New Guinea or anywhere else in the Pacific when it's not a major exercise, for example? This is the kind of environment you'll see. So many of those challenges when it comes about supporting the soldiers, health, we all got sick, for example, when I went on a trip. Both of the other two folks that went with me, Sergeant Haven and General Socaro, they got sick while we were over there. I came home with a parasite and I was sick for the next month and a half. We will see that now. Imagine if you have more and more troops over there, same thing's going to happen. uh, so those are the kind of things that those points truly matter, and if you don't experience it yourself, you will not understand the challenges that we will have to face if we have to go to an environment like that. I mean, for you, everybody that has been to Papua New Guinea before and truly traveled off the beaten path, they understand. But I think many of us, and I had no idea previously either, before I didn't go there, I had no idea of how bad, really austere environment you will find in Papua New Guinea. So those are the kind of things that really matter today.
Absolutely. Well, that's really interesting, and I guess it's safe to say your trip, your experiences, including the challenges, including the health issues, were exactly what the soldiers faced on both sides. One of the fascinating things about the Battle of Buna to me is, of course, there were horrendous casualties from combat, but there were just as many, if not more, casualties from malaria, jungle ulcers, tropical rot, and so forth that incapacitated soldiers and meant they could not continue to fight. So those conditions really have not changed much to this day. The area there is very wet. It's very swampy. There's a lot of mosquitoes, and arguably, aside from the lack of Japanese opposing you, you experienced the same conditions that existed in the Battle of Buna. And the battlefield really has not changed much. So that is a very unique feature. Also, Buna is a very remote place. Few people get there. And although the battle happened at the same time as the Battle of Guadalcanal, roughly, everybody seems to know about Guadalcanal. Many people have visited there on tours and memorial services. Very few people have been to Buna. And I think that's both significant but also a little sad because both battles were important. One is remembered and the other is largely forgotten.
Yep.
Yeah,
And it's really people like to look at the and I hate saying that word, the sexy stuff. That's what the army tries to train, right? When people are actually fighting, there's so much more that goes into it. And you just brought all of those points up. And also then of course, how is it being portrayed to the rest of the world? I mean, the Marines did a great job during World War II to show what fighting was going on in Guadalcanal. Well, uh, again, Buna was really largely forgotten. So
that's right. That's right. And I neglected to mention, I have a connection. My grandfather was in the U.S. Army. He was a member of I Corps headquarters company. He was not at the battle, but was behind the lines in Australia in Rockhampton and flew up to Port Moresby. Met Eichelberger on many occasions and, of course, saw the casualties coming back, heard the stories about the horrendous conditions there. So I first learned the name Buna from my own grandfather, and to him it was known as a terrible battle that they hoped wouldn't be repeated in the future. As we'll get into a bit later, luckily, although the Battle of Buna was terrible, it was not repeated as the Allies and the Army developed new tactics, bypassing, island hopping, and so forth to avoid frontal attacks against fixed positions. The next thing I want to talk about, is what makes the Battle of Buna so unique is it's one of these battles that was more than just man versus man. It was also man versus nature for both sides. The logistical challenge, the jungle and terrain. Talk a little bit about those aspects, Florian, and how this battle was so unique and so challenging, and how air power helped to support logistically the fight.
Yep. So once again, one of the problems that they had and what they decided the 32nd is actually not to bring really the artillery out there. So most of the artillery from the division was actually still in Australia, and they only brought one piece of a 105 over to the Buna area. So part of the problem is how were they able to really get rid of those Japanese bunkers? Uh, because they were there for several months previously. They actually had engineer units over there. So the way they built the defensive positions in Buna was truly by the book. There were only a few avenues of approach where it would make sense to attack from, where you'd be not walking through the jungle or really the swamp area. So it really choked all of those avenues of approach. That is where they put their various defensive positions and the bunkers there, the Japanese. And of course, how do you get rid of those? And that was one of the big problems. So artillery was not really there. And then even when they had that one piece of artillery there, they had, of course, some Australian mortar howitzers and things like that over there too. Not that effective for the kind of construction of those Japanese bunkers. Uh, but anyways, for the 105 that was over there, they did not have enough ammunition of actually bringing the ammunition over there. Again, we talked about logistics. So now we talk about the air. How were they able to support? Many problems. There were several friendly casualties because of when the Air Force was trying to support the guys on the ground. Having that kind of thick canopy, you're not knowing, where's the enemy, where the friendly lines. Still, the Japanese still were in the area as well. This is actually one of the things that we did not include, which I wish we would have, is the whole story of Richard Bong. Again, great Wisconsinite, and he had his really his first experience in the Battle of Buna. I think it was 27 December. I think when he flew the first time and received the Silver Star for shooting down two Japanese over there. So coming out of Port Moresby, and again we also see the importance when we look at the whole. Air war over New Guinea and the Pacific of getting those different airfields, getting the airfields away from the Japanese, and for the US or Allied side to truly get those airfields in Allied control, which was, of course, Doboduro airfields that were around the Buna area, which were so important as well. So which is also very interesting today when we talk about multi-domain operations. The way the military has a joint fight nowadays, not just the army, obviously, and that is one of the points that we like to discuss as well when we do some kind of leader development, especially when we talk about Buna, to see who fits where. We didn't have any Navy involvement over there, which would have been, of course, another thing that would have helped tremendously to have some Navy support coming from the sea. But yeah.
Excellent. Yes, no, it's a fascinating element. And I believe the Battle of Buna, or the Battle of the Beachheads collectively, was the first time in U.S. Army history that troops were flown into battle. That is such a significant thing. Of course, every conflict since, air mobility has been an important part, but the story of flying soldiers to these nearby airfields at Dobodura, Pangani, in the vicinity, bringing them as close as possible was utterly unique. And as you mentioned, Richard Bong and the U.S. Army Air Force, the 5th Air Force in New Guinea, provided incredible logistic support for the battle, bringing in supplies, evacuating wounded, and maintaining air supremacy over the beachhead area. At times, there were dogfights and Japanese bombing missions, but as we all know through military history, having air power is very important, but it doesn't rout out those entrenched and defending Japanese in bunkers. So even with aerial supremacy, the Allies couldn't eliminate those positions. They had to be engaged frontally in many cases, as you said. Incredible. Another aspect of this documentary, which I think is so amazing, is the fact that you're not just an armchair historian. You went on an expedition to New Guinea to visit the places portrayed in this documentary. You went to Port Moresby. You went to Oral Province, to the battle. You mentioned some of the highlights of that, but can you talk in detail about your trip to New Guinea? What is the battlefield like today? what did you see there? What remains? And how much it has changed or not since the 1942-43?
Yep. So it is always important to go to actually see the battlefield. It is one thing to, of course, read, look at some pictures, look at some maps, but that is why the mainly the Army, Marine Corps does it too, of course. Does those staff rights and virtual staff rights. It is all about seeing what the commander or the soldiers saw at that point and start talking about it. That is why I always like going to visit those battlefields. Uh, in regarding Buna, when we first talked about doing the documentary, that of course was a second part in it too. It's like, hey, this way, if I can visit a battlefield, we can see about conducting those staff rights over there. The Australian Army, of course, does that quite a bit. Uh, for the Wisconsin National Guard, not so much. By the way, we are state partners. There's a state partnership program through the National Guard Bureau, and we are actually state partners between Wisconsin and Papua New Guinea. Started back in 2020. Usually they just go to Port Moresby because that's where most of the Papua New Guinea Defense Force is located at, or they support some kind of exercises in like lay and things like that. But nobody from the Wisconsin National Guard has been to Buna at that point, which was another reason like, hey, this is going to be the return of the Red Arrow. Hence, we actually wore the Red Arrow from World War II, put some Velcro behind it, and we actually had it on our shoulders when we went over there to really just, hey, this is the return. Anyways, it was quite a difficulty to get over there. Logistic wise, and of course also just all of the hoops that we have to jump through being in the military. First, we were actually supposed to go on an expedition on the Kappa Kappa Trail with James Campbell. That was at the same time, and we were supposed to end up in Buna. After walking on the Kappa Kappa Trail for couple of weeks, we would end up in Buna and then do some more shooting over there before we would fly home. That was the original plan, and that was last September. Unfortunately, his expedition was cancelled, but we were still able to go, and we said, okay, we're just going to check out Port Moresby to actually identify a few spots where then people can still visit when they are in the country, because it's so important to not just go from the hotel to the training with our partners and go back to the hotel. We want to make sure they get some more of the whole cultural experience, right? So we did that at first once we were at Port Moresby. And like I said previously, there was two other folks with me from the Wisconsin, Sergeant Huffen. He was actually part of the 32nd and an infantry soldier. And then we also had a Brigadier General, Adria Zuccaro. She's the Chief of Staff of the Wisconsin Air National Guard. So we traveled over, and like I said, James Campbell couldn't make it. The trip was canceled, but we had the chance to meet with Peter Gamgee. Peter Gamgee is an Australian that has been on the expedition with James Campbell several times over the Kappa Kappa, and he actually wrote that book, the Kappa Kappa, and he also wrote the book of Finding the Flying Dutchman. And actually, after our excursion, he actually found the Flying Dutchman because he continued to stay in Papua New Guinea. Just great people that we worked with. And again, it was through those relationships we actually made it to Buna. So from Port Moresby, we flew out to Chiroa. Like I said, we got picked up. And in Buna itself, then, it was Peter that kind of showed us around, but it was really Basil. Basil is a gentleman that lives over there, and he was our guide. We talked about, okay, those are the kind of things we would like to see. He was the one that made sure that everything is was done correctly in regards of going on people's property, because all of that battlefield is on people's property. So you're not going to just go over there and start walking around. I mean, we wouldn't like that if somebody goes in our backyard. Same thing over there. And he was able to guide us to make sure the landowners were paid their small fee, and then they actually showed us the different points. There's many places that are, like you said, still the same. We have found several Japanese bunkers that you can still see. Some equipment is still over there. But yeah, it's the battlefield has not changed very much at all. And again, it is through the partnership with the people that live over there, we were able to find those different spots that we wanted to see. We did not have an exact plan of what we wanted to see because we didn't know what we are going to be able to find out there anyways, right? Uh, I knew I wanted to have drone footage. Again, that is a great tool. Unfortunately, the army would not pay for that. So I actually paid out of my own pocket to get somebody with me. So I told you earlier about, hey, whatever you plan, it might go the wrong way. Or guess what? It's exactly how it did. But we got over there. We had somebody, a friend from a friend, somebody that knows somebody. He's like, yes, they flew drones. They have their own drone. All right. Got his ticket as well to fly with us. Unfortunately, there was a seat was canceled and he couldn't go. So he actually came the very next day. Uh, but he was able to get all the drone footage, which again I think makes this documentary a little bit different. And he also did um, recorded most of the footage on the ground as well. And we kind of told him of what kind of things we want when we walk through the different locations. We did most of the filming when we wanted to look more at the different defensive positions and things like that, being easier for us from a military point of view, especially Sergeant Huffen being an infantry soldier. But then Getty, he was our drone operator, and he also looked more at the cultural stuff too, because he kind of wanted to bring that across too, which we of course do in our movie at the end of the epilogue. We want to make sure this is also a cultural experience for all the people that watch, for the audience. So yeah.
Excellent, excellent. And yeah, you mentioned the C-47, the Flying Dutchman. Just to interject about that, that was a
Yep.
transport airplane with many members of the 32nd aboard that crashed in the
Yep.
mountains nearby. And actually, Peter's effort actually rediscovered the site. It was found previously, but it's a tragic story where the plane crashed. Some were killed on impact, others were alive at the crash site, very remote location. They waited for rescue, none came, and the fit and able-bodied ones left to try to find help. Some died and went missing, others managed to reach safety, and the crash site is spectacular, one of the most pristine left in that portion of New Guinea, and unique also because the survivors kept a diary on the door of the aircraft, writing entries about weather and who was alive, what their condition was. And tragically, they lived a long time after the crash, and the last entry presumably was the final one before the last survivors perished. So that is an incredible site. I hope to get there one day myself, and I'm glad Peter has rediscovered it. Your documentary also uses a lot of the jungle operations document. Can you talk very briefly, what is that for those that are not in the military? What is it for? What does it mean? And,
Yep.
and why is it important and integrated into this documentary?
Yep. So that's what I kind of started talking about earlier too. We're talking about doctrine, the way we fight, right? Kind of think about all the lessons that we got from previous battles and wars. We put it in there. This makes the most sense for what we have right now. So it's called ATP 3-90.98, Jungle Operations. It was written, I believe, in 2020. Comes out of Fort Leavenworth, and was a combined effort with the Marine Corps. Um, so in that publication, they talk about different subjects. One of the subjects, for example, is talking about artillery, of how to utilize artillery, what you have to look out for. Again, that is one of the things we talked about earlier. So when we do leader development, we talk about the Battle of Buna because of all the things that I collected for this documentary. We also utilize it for when we do the virtual staff ride. When we utilize that virtual terrain, we utilize some of that other drone footage that is not found in the documentary. And we really have, usually it's maybe about 4 hours, but we can go a whole day easily of just talking about those different subjects. Another one that I think, and part of it is because of my, once again, my background. Part of a human terrain team is about when we talk about the civilian population. There is quite a bit about the civilian population in there, and let me just look real quick if I find something. As an example, it talks about, the valuable source of intelligence is really utilizing some of the people that live in there. Effective civil military relations and information sharing require use of liaisons. Again, you must have the right person for a job like that. Commanders may establish liaison with the populace in their area to exchange information and influence operations at a local, provincial, or regional level. They work best when established with local government officials or community leaders, and it goes on and on what it talks about. So that goes really, one of the things we like to forget. I think in the military, we went from counterinsurgency, coin environment, Iraq and Afghanistan. Now we shifted in 2018 of what we think would be the next war, which would be large scale combat operations, right? So that is once we talk about really World War II style. Well, guess what? All of the lessons and the things that we really gained back during the coin time in Afghanistan, Iraq, still is important. It's especially important when we start looking about some of those austere environments, and that is something that you, of course, find in this Jungle Book
Excellent.
when it talks about doctrine. So,
Well, spoiler alert, I guess it's safe to say that the Battle of Buna has relevance today for whatever conflict may happen in the future. The whole equatorial region of the world, including New Guinea, is largely jungle and mountains, very difficult terrain. So I guess it's safe to say that this is a perfect case study and will hopefully save the United States from repeating the same mistakes it did in the past and move forward to victory in those environments. You mentioned the local people. In this trip, you interacted with Papua New Guineans for the first time in Oral Province in the country. Their importance and their role in the battle is something your documentary also highlights. Carriers, the Fuzzy Wuzzy Angels that brought wounded and supplies to the battlefield, the Papua New Guineans who aided the Allies in the war effort were so important to victory. Can you talk a little bit about that and your impressions of PNG people today?
Yes. So that is one thing. Again, we included just a small piece when we talk about the carrier, and we found actually some footage of somebody's son talking about his dad's service. But there's so much more out there which is getting lost. That is one of the things I really regret that I wish we could do more about. When we talk about Papua New Guinea, of course, the Australians, for good reasons, they did, truly so much fighting that we did not really talk that much either in the movie. So keep that in mind. It was really the American perspective. I wish we could have included more of the Aussie participation really in there. But anyways, so we have the Australian story that is obviously dominantly out there, and then we have the U.S. story in Papua New Guinea, but then the PNG, the people that actually live there, how much is even really talked about them? Not that much. And that is something that I wish, that is history that is really being lost as we speak. I found a few things, of course. There's the Ben Moit story about a soldier that joins a native of Papua New Guinea, and he actually, fights at a Kokoda trek. But there's so much more out there that is really being lost to time as we speak, and we really have to let the world know of, without those carriers, without those scouts, without them fighting, we couldn't have done what we have done, without a doubt. So really, credit where credit is due, and I don't think we do enough of a good job of really talking about what they've done. The people are truly proud of their service too, of what they have done during the war. And I found, I think, a documentary from the 80s when some Australians go over there, and there you can have all of those veterans that talked about. Yeah, some of them received their medals, like we talked about previously. The carriers did not. So, and with that, of course, comes some other compensation with money, for example, and of how much of an impact you can have with that small amount of money that you might bring to a village like that. It's just unbelievable. I mean, we went there, we paid our small fee to those different landowners, but the good that it does for them is just unbelievable. So that is, one of the things that I wish we could have done more or could do more in the future, of really going out there. There's in Buna, when I talked to Basil, for example, he said there's two people in the area that were kids during the time still, and they still remember, but they're not going to be around that much longer. And now it's all just, okay, my father did this or that. So I really wish we could connect more of their history and really preserve that history.
Absolutely, agreed. And if we honor veterans, we have to honor those that supported the victory, which is the people of PNG, the indigenous population there. And as we're talking, the documentary is wrapping up. There's an incredible scene at the end about where you, on the battlefield, bury a red arrow. Can you tell about that moment that closes out the documentary and why you wanted to do that, what it meant to you, and what it means?
Yep. So it was actually at Botcher's Corner. That is where, at that point, Staff Sergeant Botcher held his positions for up to 17 days. That is kind of like the the tipping point of the battle from the American point of view, for the 32nd at least, of what he has accomplished. Uh, so again, we didn't plan on that, but we were there, and it's like, well, why don't we leave something behind? Again, first time that the 32nd came back with our patches, we gave out the patch quite a bit, the modern patch, but it was like, let's bury it right over here. We came back at Botcher's Corner, and I had the patch from the 32nd, the modern one, and then Sergeant Huffen actually had the distinguished unit insignia from his unit, and we both buried it right over there, just to keep a part there. We are connected in history for all of those years, and hope we can continue that. And that's, we just wanted to keep a piece there. So.
Absolutely. Well, it was an incredible ending to your piece. I hope everybody watches the documentary. It is free. It is online on YouTube, on the Army University Press YouTube channel. Link is below. Florian, thank you so much for what you've done to bring this history to life, to share the Battle of Buna with the world. What can I say? I hope one day we are on a battlefield together where the Red Arrows fought. As we close up, what's next? Do you have any other projects or future endeavors with this history or with the 32nd Infantry Division that you want to talk about? Are you still looking for material of veterans to contact you?
Yes. So first of all, if anybody has any questions, feel free to contact me. I'm an open book, and I'm here to support everybody out there. So obviously, I support mainly the Wisconsin National Guard, but it doesn't matter, active duty or whatever. If somebody has an interest in it, I can support you, all for free, of course. Next, I don't have anything planned right now in regards to history itself. I'm probably going to go on a tour to Germany here very shortly, also with a state partnership program. But hopefully, yes, like you said, I hope we are able to go back to Papua New Guinea. I promised my son, a 9-year-old Augustus, to take him over there, because that is an experience I think everybody should look at. Just, meeting those people, talking to them, and seeing that kind of way of life too. It is way different. It is eye-opening. It is a cultural experience, I think, that makes us all better people, and that is what I truly hope for. So,
Well, I share that belief, and I hope your wish comes true. I hope your son gets to see the battlefield. I'm sure he will find it as interesting as you and I did, and I think there's no age that's too young to get interested in this history. So with that, I thank you very much for taking the time, Florian. It's great to meet you on and discuss the film. Everybody, I encourage you to check out the documentary. And thank you, Florian. Until next time.
Yep, thank you, and thank you for what all you do as well with Pacific Rex. Once again, a very important part to have not just official government institutions working on finding the missing action, but also people like you, and of course bringing the history back alive to all the people. Everybody that I always talk to, Pacific Rex, Pacific Rex. If you look anything up about the Pacific, you're gonna end up on Pacific Rex, and it is wow. So many gold nuggets are over there. So thank you.
Yep, welcome. And in the description for this live stream, if you're not familiar with the website, we've linked to the Battle of Buna, the 32nd Infantry Division, and the film. So check it out. And like you, we're interested to preserve this history, preserve its importance, and highlight the people like you who are bringing it alive and keeping it relevant. So thank you very much, Florian, and to everybody watching online or can see this afterwards, check out the documentary. I'm Justin Talon from Pacific Rex. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. And again, thank you for everybody at Army University Press and Army University Films as well. This would have not been possible, of course, with their great support of what they have done. It is truly, their documentary, and I was there to support them. So just want to make sure everybody knows. All right, thanks.
Very good. Bye-bye.